Overnight, I eradicated the entire family of my enemy. However, I overlooked the little boy hiding in the water tank. Years later, he became a ruthless and calculating Regent that searched high and low and finally tracked me down. He tortured me by every means possible. Unable to bear the humiliation, I poisoned myself just before I died. I saw some large characters written above his head. The male lead of the novel. I finally understood that I was the female lead of the novel even if I awakened. I couldn't change my fated humiliation. I was reborn. When I opened my eyes, the sight of severed limbs scattered all over the ground greeted me. Full moon hung high in the sky, and its cold moonlight illuminated the ground that was soaked with blood. Everything around me reminded me that I had returned to the night when I massacred my enemy's family. My entire family had been brutally killed due to my enemy's frame-up. Only I survived by recuperating in the Medicine King Valley. I joined an assassin organization and lay low for many years, waiting for this very night to avenge my family. Last time, I missed that little boy. Yeah. And it led to a huge mistake. Since heaven has given me a chance to do it all over again, I definitely can't make the same mistake this time. I walked straight up to the water tank, flipped over the half-covered lid in one motion, and lifted up the soaking wet little boy. He was just a few years old at that time, weak and powerless. He stared at me with a blazing hatred in his eyes. He had witnessed everything I had done. I stroked his face and grinned ferociously, said, "Adrian DeLuca, you taught me that to get rid of the weed, you must pull out its roots." After saying that, I didn't hesitate to slit his throat. Only after confirming that he was completely dead did I throw his body back into the water tank and left with a swagger. I didn't understand what those words I saw before I died meant. Who cares about the so-called male lead of the novel? Just kill him. 10 years later, I was caught by him again. He was still the Regent with immense power and a cruel heart. He threw me into a dungeon, and all sorts of tortures awaited me. I was puzzled and asked, "Didn't they kill you back then?" There was a venomous look in his eyes as he said, "You killed my page boy. He put on my clothes to attract your attention, hid in the water tank, and deliberately made noises to get himself discovered by you, and I hid in the bookcase in the room and watched how you killed him. He personally tortured me, saying, 'Cecilia Montague, I'll make you know what it's like in the underworld.' The whip dipped in chilly water, the burning candles, and the red-hot branding iron. I was already used to these. He whipped me one lash after another and pressed the scarlet branding iron against my body. He wanted to make me afraid and make me repent for what I had done 10 years ago. He asked me over and over again, 'Cecilia Montague, do you regret killing my entire family? Come closer, and I'll tell you,' I said, curling the corners of my mouth. When he came closer to me, I spat out a mouthful of blood and sneered, 'The only thing I regret is not killing you so that you could be reunited with your family.' He flew into a rage and whipped me fiercely. I passed out. In a daze, I heard him say, 'Torture can only hurt her body, but it can't destroy her personality.' I went to completely. His sharp pain hit me, and I spat out blood all over the ground. Just before I died, I saw a string of words floating above his head again, the male lead of the novel. I asked myself in my heart, if he is the male lead, and what am I? A cold voice answered, 'The female lead of the novel.' I was reborn for the second time. The time went back to the night 10 years ago when I killed my enemy's entire family. This time, I was even more cautious. I found and killed the child in the water tank, and then I found and killed the child hidden in the cabinet. I searched my enemy's house from top to bottom and killed all 5 children. Only after making sure there were no omissions did I heave a sigh of relief. Adrian DeLuca, I finally killed you. Satisfied, I left the house full of corpses and started a 10-year life of living freely in the martial arts world. Time flew by, and soon 10 years passed. One day, as I was upholding justice as usual, a man suddenly burst into the store. I took a closer look. Why did he look so much like Adrian Di Luca? Although I was highly skilled in martial arts, I was no match for him at all. After just a few dozen moves, I was at a disadvantage. Before I could escape, I was caught by him. It was so terrifying. I learned my lesson and asked him timidly, "Who are you?" He pinched my chin, almost crushing my bones, and said, "The ghost coming for your life." He carried me on his shoulder and ran at a speed beyond human capabilities. He ran into a deep mountain, got into a cave, and locked me up. This time, the plot seemed different from the previous 2 times. "You will pay for what you've done." He was like a madman even though I was bitten and bleeding. Still taunted him. "Adrian Di Luca, if you have the guts, kill me." He spat out a mouthful of blood and sneered, "I won't let you die so easily. I killed my entire family. Cecilia Montague. They'll make you suffer." Then a body of a dog demon pressed towards me. He had found the best way to take revenge on me. What the hell kind of broken story is this? It even has a fantasy plot. I've really been screwed over. I killed everyone in my enemy's family, found the hidden children, and then killed all the cats and dogs in the house, as well as the chickens, ducks, and fish. I didn't even spare the eggs in the kitchen. I shook them until the yolks were broken. I also boiled hot water and poured it into the ant nest. I poisoned the mice with medicine. I split the earthworms in half vertically. I shot all the birds in the trees, thinking that all things have spirits. I couldn't spare the flowers and plants either, so I set fire to Adrian Di Luca's house and burned it to the ground. After doing all this, I asked 2 groups of people, Buddhist monks and Taoist priests, to perform rituals to disperse the vengeful spirits here. I don't believe that Adrian Di Luca can still be alive after all this. Having learned it from past experiences, this time I didn't dare to live openly and honestly. I sneered and said, "Every day I live, I think about how to kill your entire family. Are you angry? If you're angry, then kill me." But he wasn't provoked, he said slowly. "What a coincidence, every day I live. I'd also think about how to find you and then destroy you, afraid that I would die too soon." He removed all my equipment, including my clothes. He severed the tendons in my hands and feet and locked me. By his side, he turned a deaf ear to my curses. When I refused to eat or drink, he force-fed me himself. The eunuch beside him added fuel to the fire, saying, "Your Majesty, the late emperor dealt with those who disobeyed. Maybe killing Adrian Di Luca would instead give him a chance to level up." In the 4th round, I pretended not to see him in the water tank and left with a swagger. It was engraved in my mind, and I remembered it over and over again every day, not daring to forget it for a moment. "You killed my entire family, all my relatives and friends. I ended up on the streets as a beggar, but then I met an extraordinary master. And you, young master monk, are also so ruthless you really are the fan of that beast." Those who are angry don't know what is good or bad, don't consider the consequences of sin and fortune, don't know the benefits and harms, and don't remember themselves. He will fall into evil. And this day, he finally managed to beg for a steamed bun. The snow-white steamed bun was fragrant. And still steaming. It had been a long time since he had eaten such a delicious thing. The cloak with body warmth brought him a little warmth in the cold winter. I stuffed a steamed bun into his hand. It was warm, fragrant, soft, and as white as snow. He looked at me, his eyes becoming even redder. His face was flushed. Hatred can't dispel hatred, only love can do that. I want to raise Adrian Di Luca. Give him warmth and love. Teach him to be kind, and persuade him to let go of his hatred. I found a doctor for Adrian Di Luca. After getting the medicine, I took him back to the inn and asked the waiter to boil several large barrels of water. He took a bath 4 times in a row before he finally scrubbed his skin clean. The waiter dumped out the bath water, filled with lice with a look of disgust on his face. His hair was so knotted that it couldn't be used anymore. So I took out a knife and shaved his head. He stared at me blankly and asked, "Are you a fairy sent down from the heavens?" I smiled and said, "Child, my name is Cecilia Montague. Just an ordinary person, you can call me Auntie." After recuperating in the city for about a month, I took him to a small village and bought a dilapidated courtyard there after a year of hardship. His height didn't increase much, and he was sallow and emaciated, coupled with the fact that he had been shaved into a little bald head. He looked even more gaunt. He entered the door timidly, looking a bit at a loss. I pointed to a small room and said that he would live there from now on, and I went to the kitchen to make pancakes for him. I added a little more lard, fried both sides until they were golden brown, and sprinkled a handful of green onions on top. I pushed the pancake in front of him. He hesitated for a moment, took a bite of the pancake, and then tears streamed down his face. I asked him what was wrong. He knelt down in front of me with a thud and said, "I'm just a helpless orphan, but Auntie has been so good to me. I will definitely repay you when I grow up." I thought to myself, as long as you don't torture me to death, I'll be grateful. As winter gave way to spring, Adrian DeLuca's injuries healed. His hair grew back a bit, and he also grew taller. One day, a monk came to the door to beg for alms. I didn't know how to make clothes at all, but I just pretended to show him. I had already paid a tailor in the village to help me make 5 sets of clothes. During the day, I made pancakes and made a lot of them into dry food for him to take on the road. Adrian DeLuca felt both guilty and touched. On the 6th day, the flour jar by the stove was almost empty, so I sent him to the entrance of the village to buy some more. He carried a few copper coins in his pocket and walked towards the entrance of the village alone. Under the big locust tree at the entrance of the village, a mysterious man in black stood still in the doppelcheek. He knocked on the door and said, "Auntie, why did you lock the door?" My voice came through the crack of the door, filled with determination. "I've thought it through. Although I'm a woman, I'm very naughty. I love playing tricks and causing trouble everywhere. My mother was very worried and said that a woman should be gentle and beautiful. She was worried that I wouldn't be able to get married in the future. My father didn't care and said that our daughter was beautiful and there was no need to worry about her getting married." My elder brother smiled and tapped my head, saying, "If Cecilia Montague can't get married, I'll support her for the rest of her life." My mother gave them a fierce look, saying that they spoiled me too much, and then she lovingly applied medicine to my scraped skin. My father saw that I liked practicing martial arts, so he simply found a master for me to learn from. Did he? My elder brother was hanging on a tree, and a branch pierced through his body. His eyes were wide open, and he died with an expression of unwillingness. He was such a vain person. How could he die in such a terrible way? And he was burned to death alive. I knelt on the ground and let out a wild roar like a bee as though was wrong. The feelings can't be fake. Love can't be fake. Looking into Adrian DeLuca's innocent eyes, I gently told him my story. Of course, I didn't tell him the real story. I picked out some key points and told them half-truthfully. I told him about seeing my family being brutally killed and the bitterness of evading a pursuit. I held my father's sword and constantly thought about revenge. The world was vast. I walked through the boundless wilderness and crossed countless mountains just to find the enemy hiding behind the scenes. I spent the best years of my life seeking revenge. In the end, I still didn't know who the real culprit was. I stopped him and took good care of him. He remembered the egg pancake I secretly stuffed into his hand when he was starving. You regret it? Never. I smiled slightly. Everything I did was for this moment. I had already sent someone to deliver a letter to Faxian, making him leave disappointed. To let him practice martial arts? Even more impossible. I rented to acres of wasteland and taught him how to farm. He never complained about the hardship facing the yellow earth, and with his back to the sky, He worked hard. It was the QIXI festival. There were activities in the village. I asked Adrian De Luca to wait for me at the bridge, but I arranged for Lucy Miller to go to him, hoping that the two of them would hit it off. When the moon rose above the willow branches, it was the time for a tryst at dusk. Soon, Adrian De Luca came back with a sullen face. He questioned me. You asked me to spend QIXI festival with you, but you didn't show up. What's the meaning of sending Lucy Miller? I showed a kind smile and said, I think Lucy Miller is nice to you. The dishes we ate last night were sent by her. Since she's been so kind to us, we should respond, shouldn't we? Respond by selling me off. There was a trace of shame and anger in his voice. Getting married and having children are things that everyone has to go through. Auntie is thinking about your future. Lucy Miller's family are all honest people, and Lucy Miller has a good personality. Adrian De Luca sneered. I'm only 15 years old, and you can't wait to plan for me to get married and have children? You're really crazy. You said that getting married and having children are things that everyone has to go through. Then Cecilia Montague. You're already 22. Why haven't you gotten married yet? These days, he stopped calling me Auntie, and often called me Cecilia Montague over and over again. I pretended to be pitiful and said, Auntie has to raise you. He rubbed his forehead and said, You're only 7 years older than me. My eldest sister is 12 years older than me. What kind of auntie are you? You're more like an elder sister. I was furious and jumped up to flick his forehead, saying, The older you get, the more unruly you are. The reason I haven't gotten married at my age is because of you, who would want a woman with a child. You should quickly get married, start a family, and move out. Dante stopped me from getting married. He left without saying a word. That night, as I was sleeping, I dreamed that I flew all the way to the edge of the sky. This time, I caught a glimpse of the shadowy figure of the god beyond the heavens. His face was shrouded in layers of mist. His voice echoed in the void, carrying an undeniable authority. This is the kind of novel I'm writing. Up to now, every chapter is filled with steamy scenes. Readers only like to read about that untragic romances. They have no interest in pastoral life. You have some nerve to change the plot I've set. He sneered at me, saying, My work can only be controlled by me. You Ray, just a character in my pen. You can't escape from my grasp. All I need to do is add a few strokes, and all your efforts will be in vain. At the god's words, the world around me began to shatter and crumble. I plummeted from the sky and woke up with a start. My clothes were soaked in cold sweat. I pushed open the door and saw the sun rising and setting, clouds rolling and unfolding, flowers blooming and withering outside. Time passed by at an astonishing speed in the blink of an eye. Countless days had gone by. Looking at the fantastical scene before me, I felt as if I had fallen into the boundless abyss of hell. The passage of time only stopped when Adrian De Luca pushed open the door. I saw that he had grown much taller, and his eyebrows and eyes had taken on the look of an adult. He glanced at me and smiled, saying, Cecilia Montague, what are you doing standing at the door in a daze? He reached for my hand, but I pushed him away immediately. He frowned and touched my forehead, saying, Why are you looking so dazed? Your hands are so sweaty. Are you feeling ill? I said with difficulty. How old are you this year? I'll turn 18 today. You said you'd give me a great gift today. The 10-year time limit had arrived in an instant. My situation turned dire. Several black figures leapt down from the top of the wall and rushed towards me with their swords drawn. His shouldn't be right. In the past, all those men in black were summoned by me. Who could have sent them this time? They were highly skilled in martial arts, and every move was deadly. I pushed Adrian De Luca aside, grabbed a broom by the door, propped it against the door, and locked him inside. The martial arts skills I had hidden for 10 years could no longer be concealed. I snatched the sword from one of the men in black, twirled it into a flower-like pattern. The sword danced gracefully, like a dragon playing in the water. The tip of the sword sliced through the air, creating a gust of fierce wind wherever the sword key reached. The plants and trees trembled in fear, and fallen leaves fluttered about. Each sword strike accurately targeted the vital parts of the men in black one by one. Those fierce men in black fell beneath my sword. However, I was also slashed on the chest, although there was no blood. My clothes were torn. There was only the last man in black left, and I wanted to keep him alive. I wounded him and tore off his mask. There was a glaring scar on his left eye. He had a square-shaped face with thick eyebrows and big eyes. I was shocked and dismayed. The person in front of me turned out to be Uncle Zhang from the escort agency. I thought he was already dead. He also recognized me, and his lips quivered as he called out my childhood name. Cecilia Montague, is that you? I released his arm and said, It's me. Uncle Zhang, what are you doing here? He grabbed my hand excitedly and said that he thought I was dead. Back then, my father took on this escort mission. The client told him that the box had to be delivered secretly, so my father asked Uncle Zhang to disguise himself and take a back road to deliver it. Because Adrian D. Lucas somehow broke open the door and stood behind us. I pulled Uncle Zhang and escorted him out of the courtyard. Before he left, he took out a yellowed booklet from his bosom. The last escort mission I took was to deliver this booklet. I've never dared to lose it over the years. You keep it, it might be of great use. Watching Uncle Zhang's receding figure, my hand holding the booklet trembled slightly. How could it be such a coincidence? He always carried the booklet with him. The god had arranged this absurd plot to expose me. Did you adopt me on purpose? Yes. Does my family's cruel massacre have anything to do with you? Before I could answer, he stared straight at my chest. Under the torn fabric, there was a black plum blossom tattooed. It was the mark of the killers from the 10,000 Flowers Pavilion, the exclusive symbol of those who walked in the dark. I remember this plum blossom. I saw it that night. The god's methods were really brilliant. He strung all the clues together and weaved them into an inescapable track. I gave up struggling and calmly replied, Yes. His face turned as pale as paper, and pain showed in his eyes with red eyes. He asked, Let me ask you one last question. Have you never truly cared about me? Yes. My voice broke in the wind. In an instant, the color streamed from his face. He fell to his knees, curled up like a withered leaf trembling in the autumn wind. His voice was like a mournful cry squeezed out from the depths of his soul, full of despair and unwillingness. The excited voice of the god rang in my ears. Wonderful. Wonderful. This sense of fragmentation is even more heart-rending than before. I should really thank you. God's voice was filled with mockery and pride, as if he was savoring a carefully choreographed drama. I flipped through the booklet in my hand. Every page recorded the Crown Prince's crimes, buying and selling official positions, embezzling money and property, and courting ministers. The guilt was clearly revealed between the lines. No wonder the imperial tutor was so eager to find this booklet. Once it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be unimaginable. The one who killed my entire family was not only the imperial tutor, but also the crown prince behind him. Now, the last piece of the puzzle was finally in place, and the whole picture of the incident was clearly presented before me. I remembered that the emperor would pass away this year once the crown prince ascended the throne. It would be even more difficult for me to avenge my family. Since the showdown that day, Adrian D. Luca had disappeared without a trace. I knew that my time was running out. I packed my bags and set off for the capital city, riding fast all the way. The city walls of the capital finally came into view. Just as I was about to arrive, and a line of words suddenly floated across the sky. After going through countless hardships and losing all her martial arts skills, Cecilia Montague finally reached the capital city 3 years later. I accidentally fell off my horse. The god cheated again with just a short line of words. He stole my time and also my martial arts skills. The crown prince had already ascended the throne, and this booklet was no longer a threat to him. My enemy was a high and mighty monarch, and I was a useless person who had lost my martial arts show. Could it be easy for me to kill my enemy with my own hands? The portraits of wanted criminals were pasted on the city walls, and my portrait was prominently displayed among them. I walked into the capital city in a state of despair and sat down in a tavern. The storyteller was spitting and gesturing, right in the middle of an exciting part. 3 years ago, the late emperor passed away, and 4 princes fought for the throne. Adrian de Luca emerged out of nowhere and assisted the crown prince in ascending the throne smoothly. Over the past 3 years, he had purged the remaining factions with thunderous means and killed the treacherous ministers with his own hands. Eventually, he became the regent. Look, the god indeed favored him even though I had raised him to be an honest farmer. The god still effortlessly pushed him to a high position. The god adored the male lead he had created and gave him all the good things. The god seemed to be mocking me, waiting to see what else I could do. I smiled and crushed the winged glass in my hand. A line of soldiers filed and the storyteller ran away, and the guests scattered. I calmly sat at the table, waiting for my fate to unfold. The leading officer made a gesture of invitation, and I obediently got into the sedan chair. They took me to the regent's mansion, searched me for any sharp weapons, and locked me in a room. At night, someone finally pushed open the door. I saw a delicately carved face without being exposed to the sun and drain over the years. His skin had regained its whiteness. "Ante, long time no see." Adrian de Luca curled his lips and smiled wickedly, just like every time we had met in previous lifetimes. Only a white silk ribbon was wrapped around his eyes. I stared at him intently and asked, "What happened to your eyes?" I wanted to touch his eyes and asked, "Does it hurt?" His face changed abruptly. He grabbed my wrist and pinned me against the wall, saying in a hoarse voice, "What are you pretending for this time? Pretending to care about me? To pity me? Aren't you tired of pretending for 10 years? I bit my lip and couldn't defend myself. I really hate you day and night. I keep thinking, how could you, a woman, be so heartless?" He leaned and unbit my neck hard. I pushed against his chest and screamed, "I'm your auntie, stop it, you bastard." He smiled wickedly in my ear and said, "Don't be silly. I've never regarded you as my auntie." He pushed me onto the bed. The excited voice of the god rang in my ears. Human lives. Deep-seated hatred, none of these mattered to him. All he wanted was steamy scenes. I refused to yield to him. He once told me that when he was a young master living a life of luxury, he had never thought that steamed buns could be delicious. The steamed bun I gave him had become the most delicious food in his memory. We held the steamed bun. His face looking extremely grotesque, he got up from the couch in a sorry state and stumbled out of the room. It was the 10,000 Flowers pavilion that was behind it. He stroked the booklet and said in a cold voice, "I will find out the truth of the matter myself, but you are not entirely innocent either." Poseidon said to him, "Adrian de Luca, do you know the truth of this world?" I told him without reservation about the 100 times of reincarnation and the secret that the god beyond the heavens was manipulating our fates. My mouth was dry, and I drank up all the cold tea on the table. He sneered and said, "Cecilia Montague, are you crazy? Do you think I would believe such absurd things? I know how ridiculous what I'm saying sounds, but it's the truth. I've told you everything frankly if you can understand it. Maybe you won't be controlled by the god's mind anymore. I won't believe your nonsense anymore." He took the booklet and left the room angrily. Before going out, he didn't forget to tell A Ying to bring me some hot water for a bath. Because I told the male lead the truth, the god flew into a rage, and he threatened. Adrian de Luca came to see me every night. His mental state became more and more unhinged. I knew that the god was secretly causing trouble. "Cecilia Montague, Cecilia Montague, I really love you. Why are we enemies? I can't fall in love with the person who killed my father. Cecilia Montague, I only have you left in this world. Can you? Cecilia Montague, one day I will kill you." He bit my ear and said, "Cecilia Montague, you still have feelings for me in your heart." I told him about a past event. "Do you remember when I went blind briefly when you were 12 years old?" I remember. At that time, I asked him what he would do if I really couldn't see anymore. The young Adrian DeLuca replied that he would find the best doctor to cure me. I continued to ask him what he would do if the doctor couldn't cure me. He said that then he would be my crutch in my eyes and take care of me for the rest of my life. Valley Master and I have made an appointment to treat my eyes tomorrow. Then I'll be able to see your face again. His voice was filled with anticipation and joy. He nodded and said, "Okay." When the Valley Master said he would treat his eyes, it meant giving him a pair of healthy eyeballs. Month after the operation, he finally regained his sight. He carefully selected a robe embroidered with gold and silk and wore a jade belt and golden rings around his waist. As he walked, they sighed gently, making a pleasant sound. In pain, he rushed over, lifted my head, and saw that my eye sockets were sunken and my eyeballs were gone. He trembled and said, "Cecilia Montague, you're lying to me again, aren't you? Wake up quickly." He suddenly remembered the conversation when he was 12 years old, and the second half of it he asked me what I would do if he went blind. I smiled and replied, "I would give you my eyes. I would give you my eyes." At that moment, he finally realized that the two eyeballs in his eye sockets were mine. The light in his life went out, and he cried his heart out. Every sob seemed to be tearing his soul apart. Just thinking that the Valley Master had to go to the trouble of dismembering my body, scattering the pieces everywhere, made me want to laugh. As Adrian DeLuca spoke, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. My soul floated in my dread. Coldly watching all this, I committed suicide by taking poison. But before I died, I asked the Valley Master to dismember my body. Although the Valley Master didn't understand why I wanted him to do this, he still followed my last wish, dismembered me, and scattered my body parts all over the garden, creating a strong visual impact. When I was reincarnated for the 100th time, I had already planned this ending. This was the worst and most insane ending in the plan. Adopt this child, give him warmth, teach him to be kind, become his everything, and die in front of him in pieces. 100 times of reincarnation made me understand that death is not the end to kill someone. You need to break their spirit. Destroy the male lead that the god loves the most. Destroy the god's pride, and let this world be destroyed together. Adrian DeLuca went crazy. He rushed into the hall and killed the emperor. His personal guards surrounded the imperial city, and none of the court officials escaped death. He had people piece my body parts together and put them into a coffin. He lay down beside me, kissed my lips, and said in a crazy voice, "Cecilia Montague, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I shouldn't have not believed you. Look, I've killed that damned emperor, and I've avenged us. Please come back to life, okay? You said this world is fake and that you've been resurrected 100 times. I'm willing to believe you. How can I bring you back to life? You said I'm the male lead. If we both die, everything will start over, right?" He recalled the year when he and I set off lotus lanterns by the river. I put a stone on the lantern, and soon the lotus lantern sank to the bottom of the river. I pointed at the sunken lotus lantern and said, "Hatred is like that stone. It weighs heavily on your heart, dragging you down and hurting you. When the lotus lantern gets rid of the stone, it can float downstream and embrace a bright future." Letting go of hatred is not about being lenient to the enemy, but about being kind to yourself. Hatred destroyed me and also destroyed him. Cecilia Montague, I hope that in the next life, we won't have any more hatred. He had people nail the coffin shut, and he was buried in the ground with me. The male lead and the female lead were both dead. And this world came to an end. Everything in front of me began to shatter and crumble. I flew higher and higher. I flew through the clouds and past the stars, seeing countless illusions. Finally, I landed on a window. I saw a girl wearing glasses in the room, crying loudly in front of a glowing square object. A girl grabbed her hair and shouted in a breakdown, "No, the plot isn't like this. Why has this story gotten out of my control?" She suddenly looked up and met my gaze on the windowsill. I curled the corners of my mouth and said, "So it's you. Are you misogynistic? You tortured me 100 times, and now your retribution has come." She screamed like she had seen a ghost and tripped over the wires on the ground. When she stood up and tried to run away, a heavy square box seemed to hit her spine, and she let out a scream and fainted. It turned out that this god was nothing special after all. Just then, the force was desperately pulling me, and I kept falling and falling. Finally, I felt the fall stop, and all my 5 senses returned in an instant. The noisy street, the sweltering summer air, the sweat rolling down my forehead, and the fragrance of lotus flowers in the wind. I opened my eyes and saw my father. He said to me, "Cecilia Montague, when I'm done with this escort mission, I'll buy you the most suitable sword." I suddenly grabbed his hand and said, "Dad, you mustn't take this escort mission. In the cycle of fate, I once witnessed the tragedy of my family. That scene was like a brand deeply engraved on my heart, impossible to erase. However, in this lifetime, my father didn't take that fateful escort mission, then my family remained safe and sound. In my previous life, I had memorized the booklet thoroughly. In this life, I made my way to the capital city alone and quietly placed a transcribed copy of the booklet deep within the Prince of Jin's mansion. Not long after, news spread in the capital. The faction of the Crown Prince was one after another thrown into prison. The Crown Prince himself was demoted to a commoner, unable to bear the humiliation. He chose to commit suicide by taking poison. As for the family of the imperial tutor, although they had committed grave sins, they managed to have their cases recorded due to performing meritorious deeds while bearing their crimes. Thus avoiding the death penalty, the imperial tutor decided to retire and return to his hometown. Copyright of Yan Yan Stories on Zhihu. Many years later, I took over my father's escort agency business and traveled far and wide with my elder brother. Our footsteps have traversed mountains and rivers, and we have witnessed countless local customs and practices. One day, I saw Adrian De Luca on the street. He was dressed in simple, plain clothes and hurried past me, as if he were just a passerby. His gaze didn't linger on me for long, as if there had never been any connection between us. My elder brother raised an eyebrow and asked me, "Someone you know?" I gently shook my head and the corners of my mouth curled into a smile as I said, "No, I don't know him."